Hey guys, Ultra Healthy here. I can't believe we're on Pickups video number 5. This is wild. So, just like the title of the video says, this time around it's very heavy on Master System. This is because I kind of recently realized that I had completely neglected the Master System for like a decade. And a big reason for that is because I realized that a lot of the great Master System games did not come out in Japan. And I had never tried importing European stuff before. I didn't know if I was going to be able to play it, even with a converter. So, I wrapped up my search for the majority of stuff on the other consoles. So I started looking around, started asking questions, and it turns out you can play a European Master System games on NTSC consoles, and everything worked out fine. So finally got into those, and that's been a really, really exciting adventure for me recently. A lot of really great games, Japanese made games that didn't come out in Japan, and it just seemed like a really big wall for a very long time, but it has been perfectly obtainable for the most part. So let's get straight into it. First of all, I'm going to start off with a few new Japanese Master System games, which I have also been going after. First, this is Golvelius. Golvelius did come out in the West, the same name. This game is by Compile, who is known for giving us Puyo Puyo and a lot of 2D shooters, the Alesta series, Blazing Lasers. This is sort of a Zelda clone. It is an action RPG with an overhead world view, but when you go into the dungeons, they're either side view action or some of them are overhead auto-scrolling, kind of like a shooter. So there's a lot going on with this game, and hopefully you can see. And this has some of the most amazing box art of any Master System game, unlike a lot of the Western games. Next, this is a very recent arrival. This is Alex Kidd and the Lost Stars. This is the only, well, it was the only Alex Kidd game that I owned. And it is a lot different from the first game. The first game did not really do it for me. A big part of it was the rock, scissors, paper bosses. I don't really like that kind of thing. This one is sort of a cross between Mario and Adventure Island, I suppose. It's a lot of just avoid everything. And it is rather simple. Obviously, it's a Master System game, but there is a beauty to the kind of graphical style and the music and just the presentation of everything. And it's nice to have a simple game on the Master System sometimes. Most of the games on this console are so damn hard, but this one is really just playful. Next up, it is Makai Retsuden. In English, it was called Kung Fu Kid. Now, this is basically a single-plane beat-em-up with a little bit of sort of, you could say, platforming areas here and there. Now, I'm very cautious when I get into games of this genre. I'm not a big fan of beat-em-ups, people may know if they've seen my other videos. This one is actually really clean. I'm amazed at how responsive and just crisp the control is. And there's just a perfect variety of enemies. The bosses are not cheap, they have real patterns. And it's quite nice. I think this might be an unofficial sequel to a game that was called Dragon Wan that was on probably the SC3000 or maybe even 1000. But this is really nice. And it's kind of ridiculous that I didn't have this. But this is Quartet. It's called Double Target in Japan. It is sort of an arcade conversion, but it's extremely different from the arcade game. The arcade game is like really, really long. This one is just 6 levels, and to get to the 6th level you have to find a hidden star in each of the first 5, or you'll get sent back after you beat the 5th level. But this is sort of a kind of a classic game to me. I owned this a long time ago when I had the American Master System, and it seemed extremely difficult at the time. It can be tough, but it's really fast. So once you just kind of get really aggressive with it and you remember where the stars are, it goes pretty quickly. But again, it has that Master System beauty of just, the perfect amount of abstraction. And it's really a great game, really beautiful music. So I'm just shocked at myself that I didn't have this already. This is new, and these boxes are in such good condition. Take a look at that. I mean, it's like unused practically. Yay. Now, let's get into it. The Western Master System games that I've gotten. These are some really major titles, and it's just like amazing to be able to play them in Japan. So first, Ninja Gaiden. Yeah, Ninja Gaiden on the Master System is so crazy. And I can't believe this was not released in Japan or America. It was not developed by Tecmo. I guess Sega licensed out the name for a game or two. And it was developed by this other game that was, this other company that, I don't know if they were like an in-house Sega group or if they just kind of hired them out. But it plays so well. Like, the control is so smooth compared to most Master System games. You know, things like Shinobi, Kensei, I mean, they're good in their own way, but they kind of play like arcade games. I mean, the jump mechanic is just, you know, so nice. And this is hard as hell. It's definitely harder than Ninja Gaiden 2 or 3 on the NES. And it's huge. There's 8 levels. They're really long. And they're dead serious. I mean, this is a game that gives you a kind of a suicide attack, where if you press both buttons together, you'll clear all the enemies on the screen, but it takes like 6 life bars. And there are sections where you have to use it. So they were not screwing around. Awesome pickup. Next, again, another European exclusive, Master of Darkness. Now, this was actually released in Japan on the Game Gear only. It was probably developed for the Game Gear. And it was called In the Wake of Vampire. Here, it is a Castlevania clone, essentially. But it is an awesome Castlevania clone. The graphics, I can't believe how detailed they are for the Master System. I mean, I've seen very few Master System games that convey this kind of world, you know, with these little details, with, you know, animation in the background. It's so badass. The one kind of thing about the game is they give you there's a lot of life up items, unlike Castlevania, where there's like one every 2 or 3 levels. So it can be a bit easy in that sense, but you know, if you just kind of choose not to pick them up, then it's a sufficient challenge, and there's a lot going on. So Master System version of Master in the Darkness is a super badass game. Next up is another game that was released in Japan on the Game Gear, but not the Master System, so I did get the European Master System version. This is Psychic World. Now, this is a platformer, but it has some kind of adventure elements where some of the levels are not completely straightforward. There's a bit of exploration, and also you have all these different abilities that you kind of have to choose the right one for the right situation. Now, I believe this is actually a conversion of an MSX game that might have been called Psycho World. So it does kind of play like an old computer game where things are not like the platforming, the hit detection are not like super precise. It's more about, you know, kind of going in gung-ho and knowing what item to use in the right situation. But the music is really badass. There's a lot to it. It's quite challenging. And you know, it's just shocking that it wouldn't be released on the Master System in Japan. I guess since it didn't sell very well, it's not shocking. But it's just crazy that, you know, so many of the best games on the console were not released in Japan. So, got that from a French seller. And one last Master System game. This is Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. This is a huge deal to me because I'd heard the music before. You know, I have the CD compilations of all the Alex Kidd music, so I knew there was this game called Alex Kidd in Shinobi World, and it sounded pretty badass, and it was not released in Japan, of course. And it is probably the best Alex Kidd game, almost certainly. You know, it's Alex Kidd with a sword, and so, you know, some of the levels are basically variations of levels from Shinobi 1. And it plays really nice. It's really smooth. It's not very long. It's just 4 worlds with 2 levels each and a boss. But, you know, the very end does get a bit challenging. And take a look. This is not the European version. This is the North American version with the blue label. Yes, it came up just around the time I was hoping to buy it, and I knew it would be a lot more expensive, but if there's an NTSC version out there, obviously I'd like to have that if possible. It was in superb condition, so I was like, screw it. If a copy in this good of condition comes up right at the time I was hoping to get the game, I'll spend the money 3 times the money and get the American version. So super happy to have this. So that is all for the Master System now. I did get one Famicom game since the last pickups video, so I might as well introduce that since we're on the 8-bit right now, and that game is Wampum. Actually, it was called Wampum in the West. The Japanese version is called Saiyuki World 2. And they changed the main character graphic in the Western version. They make you a Native American, which is a little peculiar. In the Japanese version, it's, based on the Saiyuki story, the Westward Journey story. So you're Son Goku, the kind of monkey child. And the game, is a platformer. It's by Jalico, so it's not particularly expensive. So, I was always a little skeptical. Jalico's games, as I've said in other videos, don't get a lot of respect in Japan. The NES games, the Famicom games. But I got a recommendation on this game, and it was not really expensive, so I grabbed it. Excellent condition, and it's really good, actually. It's, a 2D platformer, but you can choose which level you want to go into, and after beating each level, you get a new magic spell. So it kind of takes a cue from Mega Man, I guess, in that way. And I'm actually not completely sure whether whether each boss is like weak to a particular spell. Like Mega Man, I haven't played it that much yet. But I'm really glad I finally got that, because most of my Famicom to buy list is really done. So it was kind of nice to get a new Famicom game for the first time in a while. Next, let's get into the PlayStation. You guys know I've been really big on weird Japanese-only PlayStation 1 games, and I did get a few more, some, again, really interesting stuff. So first off, I did finally manage to get a copy of Kalkoro. Now, this is a very cheaply made game, with absolutely no fanfare whatsoever. It is a versus puzzle game, and it is Puyo Puyo with shooting aspect or elements. It's basically a cross of Puyo Puyo and Twinkle Star Sprites. Twinkle Star Sprites is already kind of a takeoff on Puyo Puyo, where, it's a versus puzzle game, and in this game, instead of blobs, you have spheres with numbers on them fall from the top, and in order to clear the balls, the spheres, you have to connect the same number of spheres that have that number on them. So if you put 2 spheres with the number 2 on them together, they'll disappear. If you put 3 spheres together with the number 3 on them, they'll disappear. And again, the whole idea is getting chains. You clear a group of six balls, and then whatever, something drops from above and it knocks off another group of balls, and that will send an attack to your enemy, these things that get in the way of their screen. And the first person whose screen piles up to the top loses. Super weird idea, and it's a really cool idea. And playing against the computer is hard as hell. I've never been good at Puyo Puyo. The first time I ever played it, I was 21. So it's not something that was really innate to me like Street Fighter. But it is really cool. It is really fun once you kind of start to get the idea. But I actually got to level 6, which was not bad, but they just kicked the living doo-doo out of me. So it's very difficult, but it's a really cool idea. The next one is actually a really big game that I had been hoping to get, and this is Yakitori Musume on the PlayStation 1. Now, if you remember my last pickups video, I talked about a couple very peculiar action puzzle games on the PlayStation 1 that were based around cooking. One was Yakiniku Bugyo, and the other one was Nabe Kazoku, and I called them cooking puzzle action games. It was kind of, this company made 3 of these games, so you could say they're a trilogy. This was the final one. This was the one I didn't have. Thankfully, they had it in a shop near me with the spine card, and it's actually really hard to find. It doesn't mean it's valuable. It's just, a late PlayStation 1 game. And so this time around, the theme is yakitori, which is grilled chicken skewers. So the idea is you're a girl who has taken on her father's shop, this restaurant, and you're kind of trying to lure customers into it, with your yakitori skills. And it's just as heavy on story as it is on gameplay, like the others. But it's so peculiar, this kind of world this company built. And obviously that first game must have been their best seller, because they tried to recreate the magic, you could say. And I have not played this one in depth. This one adds an extra layer to the game, which is that you can play and play and play, and as you get more points, you collect items and decorations for your restaurant. So that is cool that they added something new to the game. And so I finally completed the trilogy. And the last one, the PlayStation 1, is a really weird one that I've been hoping to play. This is Kowloon's Gate. Yes, it is basically the prequel to a game I've talked about in another video called Planet Laika. It's somewhere between an RPG and an adventure game. It's very peculiar. It's mostly just about the atmosphere and the weird story and the characters. I actually have not even played it yet. It just came not even a week ago. And I really want to play it at a time when I really just have some free time to just sit down and just dive into it. Because it's not something I usually do. I don't play a lot of RPGs. I mostly play games that are based on, reflexes and skills. And this, is a game about, just diving into the world and the story like Planet Laika was. So I might even just wait until Christmas vacation. But this is the limited edition version, which I was able to finally get. It's a huge box. It comes in this weird cardboard box with all these characters on it, and this, I had no idea until it arrived. They're like sticky. They almost have some kind of glue on the characters. It's hard to tell, if you can't see it. And it comes with all this extra stuff. This is the game case, 4 discs, but it has this extra booklet of artwork and extra explanation of the story and all this stuff. So, limited edition. It's cool. I don't usually do that. Just because it's limited edition didn't mean it was expensive, keep in mind. So lastly, I did pick up a few new PC Engine games. So let's take a look at those. First of all, this is Final Zone 2. This is a decidedly average overhead run and gun shooter by Telenet Renovation. So of course, the action is okay. A lot of the focus is put on the story, the cutscenes, the music. And people who know this game know that it's nothing spectacular. It's just, I love Telenet so much. I kind of want to have, their shooters and platformers if possible. And the kind of weird thing about this game was it went to America, and the translation is so weird. The voice acting is just ridiculous. So it's kind of known for that. It's probably only Last Alert is worse with voice acting. The thing was, there were a couple of vocal tracks in this game. Now, when they're singing in Japanese, it kind of makes sense, because it was a trend in Japan to be putting vocal tracks on your games since, the PC Engine CD, it was a really big deal. You could use CD games now, you could use CD quality music. They translated the songs into English, and the translations are just so weird. I mean, it's so awkward, but they're badass in a way, in a certain kind of 80s, early 90s way. So it'd be almost cool to have the US version also, but I just have the Japanese one for now. Next up, I did get a game called Tenshi no Uta. Translates to Angel's Poem. It's an RPG. Again, it's by Telenet. It's by Riot in this case. So I wanted to have it. This was a game I bought very early for the PC Engine CD years and years and years ago. This was when I barely read anything in Japanese. It was probably my first year of Japanese class. And I was just like, I'm going to try. And, I could hardly read a goddamn thing. But, again, it has sentimental value for me because, the soundtrack is by Naruki Michiko, who ended up getting really famous with Wild Arms. And you know, there's a very kind of soothing, nostalgic feel to the overall presentation of the game. So I definitely wanted to have that. So this one had everything. It had the spine card, the registration card, everything. So grab that. And the very last thing here today is Raise Amber 2. Now I already have Raise Amber 3. And again, this is something I think I owned years and years and years ago. And it was extremely difficult. So I let it go once. But I've been thinking, you know, trying to pick up most of the good shooters on the PC Engine. So I grabbed this again. It's not a really expensive game. I already own 3. 3 is a lot more accessible. 3 is not nearly as difficult as 2. They both have really beautiful hand-drawn 2D artwork and some really nice music. So even if it's super hard, I'm gonna try Raise Amber 2 again. Gonna see if maybe I can beat it. Beat 3 on hard mode, so we'll see if I can handle this time around. So that is all for this pickups video. As I had said, it was really heavy on Master System. I think at least half was Master System titles, but I've been having such a blast finally getting into this console and discovering the really great games for it. So I've been playing a lot of Master System recently and having such a good time. And there are still a few more games on my list that I would like to get. Some that were released in Japan, a few more that were not, so you'll probably see more from me in the future about Master System. So as always, thanks a lot for checking out my videos. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe. I try to introduce games that were only released in Japan that don't have a lot of other information about them in English. So check back again, a lot more fun stuff in the works. I will see you next week.